Well, we're getting February kicked off with a banger of a movie. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Welcome back into JC's Movies, where you can see all kinds of movie and TV show content with me, JC. And if you're a fan of horror movies like this one that we're going to be talking about here, Companion, as well as superhero movies and comedy movies, those are right up my alley. So if they're up yours too, be sure to hit the subscribe button here as we continue to try and grow the channel, and hit the thumbs up button while you're in here. That really helps this video find more fans of horror movies like this one, like yourself. And appreciate you tuning into this one. And that is what we're going to be discussing, is Companion. Yes, the February has brought us a really good release here. I think it actually came out late January. Of course, I'm getting to see it early February, a little bit late to the party on this one maybe, but written and directed by Drew Hancock, starring Sophie Thatcher, and Jack Quaid, if I get that out correctly. They both do a phenomenal job in this cast. We have an absolute banger of a movie, in my opinion, here in Companion. I was super impressed by this one. I know some people were a little bit upset about some things that the trailers give away, and I'll get into a little bit of that into the review. But before I dive in here on my thoughts, where I like to break it down with the pros, the cons, and the neither here nor there, which is kind of my mixed category, I'll give all three of those and kind of some thoughts I have in each one of those categories, and then provide my rating at the end. I do want to remind you guys, this will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen this shit yet, I recommend wait before you watch this, go watch the movie, then come back and watch the spoiler review. Or if you don't just care about spoilers, that's cool too. Tune in here with me, but we're going to get into spoilers now, so you've been warned. Let's talk a little bit about Companion, my favorite film of the year. Small sample size, but thus far I've really enjoyed this one. All right, so Companion, like I said, written and directed by Drew Hancock, who did a great job with that. Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid really stand out with their performances in the film. You also get a good performance from Lucas Gage, but some of the other characters, that was kind of one of my neither here nor there's, is they just weren't really that fleshed out, and it was nothing about the performances. It was more about just, I think this movie was just heavily focused on the characters Virus and Josh, played by Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid, so that's more aligned with that than versus, underdeveloping other characters. I think that they did a great job kind of honing in on our main characters, was kind of why you get that. But let's start off here with the cons, because there's not too many cons for me with this movie, to be honest with you. You guys can tell by some of the things I've said already. I really enjoyed this movie. Caught me off guard. Wasn't expected to enjoy it as much as I did, but do have to always try and point out the cons as well. You got to try and be a little bit objective, right? Even if it's something that you really enjoyed, which is definitely the case with Companion. But a couple of cons that I wrote down was, I thought the opening was a little bit slow about the first 10-15 minutes or so. I was like, all right, come on, let's get into it, because it's kind of almost giving you the vibe of like a rom-com with a meet cute and such. So that was a little bit slow, but then once the turn happens, which we'll talk about that turn and how nice that it was. It really is full speed ahead from there, and great length on this movie though. So that's not a complaint, is the length is perfectly right around 90 minutes. And I think that one of the cons that I talked about a little bit earlier before I got into talking about everything here, was the fact of them giving away stuff in the trailers. And even me, who kind of tried to avoid the trailers from this movie because I'd heard about that, even I knew going in that Sophie Thatcher's character of Iris was a robot, was one of the things that I knew going into the movie. So to me, if you're going to give that away in the marketing anyway, then why not have the opening maybe be the scene where we get it a few minutes later, where Jack Quaid's character tells Iris how they really met. Maybe just have that be the official opening if you were going to give that away in the marketing anyways, because with the way that you did it, everyone already having kind of known that she's a robot, it makes those first, like I said, 10-15 minutes kind of drag on a little bit, and we're kind of just like, all right, get into it. We know this thing's going to kick up at some point. So I think maybe that's more on the marketing than the script itself. I think that that's definitely the case there, because I think the script is very solid by Drew Hancock, kind of the way that he set it up, but with what marketing gave away, it kind of made the opening a little bit slow, unfortunately. And then the only other con that I could really point out was that there was a little bit heavy exposition scene in pretty much each act. I think you kind of needed a couple of them, but they were there, and they kind of stuck out a little bit because it just kind of slowed down, because, hey, we got to explain why these characters did this, their motive for, setting this guy up for murder. We got to explain this character, what he did. Is he a bad guy? Is he not a bad guy? Just heavy expository scenes like that. There was one in, probably, like I said, probably in each act. So that was one of my only cons there. Like I said, I only have minimal there, and I actually have minimal here in our neither here nor there territory, where I talk about the things that I'm mixed on, and we're going to have heavy on the pros here, as I really enjoyed this movie. But neither here nor there. One of them I kind of touched on a little bit already, and that's that the characters were just not really fleshed out outside of course, Iris and Josh, Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher's character. They kind of a little bit felt like they were just kind of cannon fodder, like to add to a body count to have some people to kind of do away with when you're wanting to do a horror movie. You got to have that body count. So I think that that's just kind of an argument you can make for most movies where you're going, going to have kills in the movies. There are certain characters that really aren't going to have the chance to be fleshed out as much. And like I said, I also feel like the main characters were super fleshed out. A lot of exposition while she was tied up. It was needed, but it was very heavy expository scene right there when they first tie Sophie Thatcher's character up after she commits, that first murder of Sergei, which we'll get into momentarily. And then as much as I liked the kind of the reveal of having the other character that Lucas Gage plays, the character of Patrick, being another robot as well, it kind of also felt a little bit like a hat on a hat. Like, did we really need a second robot in the movie? I think obviously when you get later into the third act, you probably can argue that you did need that second robot because you wouldn't be able to pull off some of the things that you pull off. So, maybe it's just an argument at the time. It kind of feels like a little bit of a hat on a hat. But nonetheless, got to have something here in the mixed category and something here in the cons category. But the last thing, and neither here nor there, is just once they introduced that there was a second robot, it was kind of inevitable. And you knew that at some point, okay, this guy is going to either turn against the humans or they're going to use him as a tool to help catch Sophie Thatcher's character of Iris that they're kind of hunting in the movie. So that was a little bit predictable, so that kind of goes here, neither here nor there. So small things there, because now we're getting into the pros, which is a much longer list that I put together here because guys, this is a phenomenal movie in my opinion, really well constructed, great acting performances, well shot. I love the atmosphere of it, and that's kind of one of my first pros here is a little bit about the atmosphere. Is it does something that it's become a little bit more commonplace, but for a long time there weren't many horror movies that kind of did this, and it's a lot of what I like to call bright sunny horror or daytime horror. I kind of love that juxtaposition, right, where you have this color palette of the film, the way that they color grade this, it's super bright and kind of elicits these kind of warm and happy feelings, but you also you contradict that with this being a horror movie and you have a lot of it taking place in the daytime in that sunny setting, and I really love that. I think back to like one of the first movies that kind of made me feel that way, and that was like Midsommar by Ari Aster, and this movie kind of elicited some of those feelings as well. So I really like the color palette of this film, the color grading, the bright colors, and like I said, the sunny horror atmosphere, if you want to go there and call it that. And then of course the inciting incident with Sergei, what a turn that is, because all of a sudden you're just kind of waiting on things to pick up, and then bam, she comes back in, she's got the bloody knife, she's absolutely covered in blood, and then you're like, okay, we're off and running from here. So that's a perfect inciting incident, a perfect turn, speaks to the good script here and the good direction by Drew Hancock. And then I also love how she didn't know that she was a robot. I felt like this movie, as much as everyone wanted to complain about the marketing giving away that she was a robot, I felt like this movie had so many twists and turns throughout that there were plenty of surprises despite the fact of them giving up that twist of her being a robot a little bit in the marketing. And I did love the fact that she didn't know that she was a robot. And one of the things, I've said it here a couple of times, but I still got to highlight it here in the pro section, is you get amazing performances, I thought, by Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher. Sophie Thatcher, man, she might get some type of award nominations when it all comes down to it. I know sometimes you get recency bias when you get later in the year. Sometimes people forget those movies from earlier in the year, but hopefully they don't forget Companion here, because I think this was a great performance from Sophie Thatcher. And of course, one of the things in the movie, one of the main themes that you're getting is you're getting great social commentary involving AI. Obviously, once it's revealed that she's a robot and kind of some of the ethics involved there, especially with it being a damn sex robot, if you want to call it that, or you can call it a robot girlfriend, robot companion. Obviously, with the title being companion, maybe you want to go that route. But either way, you get a great commentary on that, especially I think then once you get towards the end of the film and she kind of turns her intelligence up to 100. And then of course, in the very, final moments of the film where she kind of has free will, then you're kind of getting this commentary on AI becoming sentient. And I think it may be the best commentary on AI since Terminator, in my opinion. I was trying to rack my brain and think of one since then that's kind of done it better, and I couldn't think of one. Since the Terminator series, this might be the best commentary I've seen on AI since then. And I think that the twist that I really didn't see coming was that he had jailbroken Iris's character so that she would commit this murder of Sergei. It was all a plan by, the main character Josh, and of course the other friend. I believe her name was Kat there, played by, let's see who played Kat, Megan Surrey. It was kind of their plan, and then of course they tied the other friend into it to get this $12 million from Sergei. And so then things kind of go awry. Obviously, Iris breaks loose, and then you get another turn on this movie that I didn't see coming, because I think obviously when you see the promotional material, the marketing for this movie, you see that she's a robot. You're obviously thinking, okay, so it's typical, this AI turns evil, starts hunting the humans. And kind of in the opening, you're thinking that's where it's going to go with the inciting incident of her murdering Sergei. But what this movie does that's interesting and takes it in a different angle is actually they're the ones hunting her, and she's just kind of trying to get away from them. So I like the way that they kind of made that, kind of turned that thing on its head a little bit. And that's why I said, even though they give some stuff away, there's plenty of surprises in this movie. And I think that that was one that they really did a nice job of, that you probably aren't going to see coming when you watch this movie. The white eyes, of course, are a nice touch. I think a lot of people have seen that image, including, here on the thumbnail for the review here. It's a nice touch because not only is it give like a little sci-fi element, but also it adds that little nice horror touch. Especially, I think there's a shot, right there in the third act, once she's powered down and she's sitting on the couch, and one of the other characters goes to sit beside her, and the camera's just kind of focused with her right there in the center of the frame, and she's like covered in dirt and still got the blood, and her eyes are just white because she's turned off, and it's this creepy, eerie look to the character there. So there is, although I wouldn't say there's necessarily moments of this movie scary, it's more kind of hitting the thriller aspects, but there is some gore involved, so you definitely do get in the horror realm. There are some kind of weird, creepy shots like that one there, I guess, that you could definitely say makes this more into the horror category. And then once you get into the third act and things are revealed, and Iris's intelligence is still at 100 before Jack Quaid's character turns it down, and you kind of have this face off with him at the dinner table. I thought that her monologue was top notch. That was really well written and super well delivered by Sophie Thatcher. And then the death of Jack Quaid's character at the end, like I said, spoiler alert, of course, death by electric corkscrew. That's new. Hadn't seen that before. That shit's pretty sick. So had to note that here in the pros. And then at the very end, she kind of has the burnt hand, so she's pulling off the skin, and obviously you're going to get Terminator callbacks there with that shit as well. But I thought there was really good effects on the robot hand that she has there at the end of the film, and I love the ending where she kind of comes out on top, and now she has free will and essentially gets to go on and do her own thing. And you can go into that with what you will if you want to talk about the commentary and what that implies and what that means in that aspect. And there's a lot of things about this movie that I think will keep you thinking, and it'll stick in your mind afterwards, because so well done by the performances, by the script, by the acting, and then the commentary as well. And then, of course, if you just want to turn your brain off and enjoy it as a sci-fi / horror, type action flick, it's badass and has some really good gore and scenes involved as well. So, guys, there's the way I break it down between the cons, the neither here nor there, and the pros. You can tell I really love this movie. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10, guys. And I'm flirting with a 9.5 in my head, but I'm going to land on a 9 right now. I think there were a couple of cons and a couple of things in mix there that keep it down. But for me, like I said, extremely small sample size, especially with movies that are reviewed on the channel thus far. But I absolutely loved Companion. 9 out of 10. If you haven't seen it, don't know why you watched a spoiler review for it. Maybe you're one of those people that just doesn't give a shit. Couldn't be me, but definitely check it out if you haven't. Can't recommend it enough, guys. Big fan of Companion, but if you have saw it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Always appreciate those interactions. And please, if you haven't yet, subscribe here to the channel, JC's Movies. Be reviewing plenty of horror movies, superhero movies, and comedy movies throughout 2025. Be sure to hit the like button on this video before you head out. I really appreciate that. Helps a shit ton with the YouTube algorithm. And I appreciate you tuning into this one. I'll catch you on the next one.